Welcome everyone to today's webinar about Azure Stack. My name is Thomas Maurer. I'm a lead architect at ITnetics, and in the past couple of years I was focusing a lot on Azure and Azure Stack and how you can build a true hybrid cloud experience. In today's webinar I'm going to cover a little bit what is Azure Stack, what are the use cases for Azure Stack, and how can you leverage Azure Stack to build a true hybrid cloud experience for your company as well. So there will be a second webinar with Harpel Nemnom, which he goes a little bit more in operations of Azure Stack and how you can administrate Azure Stack as well. So let us get started and let's see what Azure Stack really is. So Azure Stack is an extension of Microsoft Azure into your data center. It allows you to run Azure services in your data center under your terms. So think about the Azure services, not just virtual machines, but also platform services which are available in the public cloud. You can now run the consistent set of services in your data center. And if you look at the statement here, Azure Stack really is the power of Azure in your data center. Microsoft Azure is a hybrid cloud platform product that enables organizations to deliver Azure services from their own data center to help them achieve more. And that's really what it is. It's not a replacement for your virtualization platform. It really wants to enable companies to use hybrid cloud and make Azure services available where they haven't been available before. So Azure Stack comes as an appliance solution. So those are like free Azure Stack appliances from different vendors. And as you can see, they are basically commodity servers. But it's not like you buy servers and then you buy switches and then you download the software and install them. Azure Stack comes as a complete appliance or integrated system solution. And that means it's fully designed, fully closed, and pre-configured for you. So you don't have to think about how you design it, which server are you going to use, which software and how do you install the software. This is all done by Microsoft. And Microsoft Azure Stack really is part of the Microsoft truly consistent hybrid cloud platform. And if you look at the story, Microsoft extends that. For example, it was already available. If you look at SQL Server, which we used on-prem, you could replicate data to Azure Data Services and leverage Azure SQL in the cloud. We had Active Directory on-premise for our identity management in our data center, in our companies. We extended that to the cloud using Azure Active Directory. We replicated those identities, so we had one common identity which we could use on-premise but also use for all the cloud applications out there, not just Microsoft cloud applications but also third parties, and we could enable single sign-on in that environment. So if one employee leaves the company, we only have to disable one account and he's locked out of all the services the company was using. In management part, we integrate in the same solution, so we have the same capabilities with System Center and OMS. We have the same tools with PowerShell, the CLIs, and also like development experience together with Visual Studio. And now Azure Stack fits perfectly in that picture. So it really brings those Azure services, which we could leverage right now in the public cloud, to our data center, so we can leverage them on-premise. And Microsoft really is the only vendor who can complete that picture. That's not just something Microsoft tells you. Also, companies and consultants like JP Morgan, for example, see Azure Stack as a perfect fit in the Microsoft Cloud story, which really enables a true hybrid cloud experience. So to understand Azure Stack a little bit and what it is, you need to first understand Azure. So you can leverage and see what Azure Stack can deliver for you. So today, Microsoft has around 50 regions or data center locations, if you will. Most of them are online. A couple of them will be online shortly in the next couple of months and will be available to customers. And those data centers, they provide infrastructure services. So you can host compute workloads like virtual machines and containers. You can leverage storage in different flavors, and you have all the networking features like virtual networks, load balancers, gateways, DNS, and a lot of other features, which is basically there to design an infrastructure for you. But this does not bring the main value. I think the main value comes from the platform services. So Microsoft built a huge ecosystem and platform service toolset which you can leverage. So if you're building a new application or transforming a new application to the cloud, you can choose between different services. So for example, data services, you can choose and say, okay, I want to have an Azure SQL database, and you don't have to care about the underlying infrastructure. You just consume the database. The same is for app services like web apps or for IoT Hub, where you have an IoT system which lets you easily connect IoT devices to the cloud without you building the underlying infrastructure for it. And so Azure Stack can bring those services in a consistent way in your data center. Obviously, not all of those services are going to be available today, but a lot of them are available and you can leverage them today. And Microsoft is working heavily on bringing more and more services to Azure Stack so you can run them in your data center. So I mentioned those 50 regions. They're all over the world, so you can consume those Azure services in those regions. But if those data centers or those Microsoft regions are not close enough to you, that can be technical reason, but also regulatory reasons, then you have a set of service providers all over the world which run Azure Stack. So you can basically go to a service provider and order an Azure Stack subscription, as you could do with an Azure subscription, and then deploy services in the service provider's data center. If this is not enough and you really need services closer to your region, or in a region where no service provider is delivering it, or somewhere where you cannot let data go outside of your data center, you can also put an Azure Stack inside your data center. And this enables you to run Azure services wherever you need them to be. So let's talk a little bit about use cases. So we can define 3 main use cases. The first one being the technical use cases. So you have locations where you have a bad internet connection or no internet connection at all, and this makes it impossible for you to leverage the public cloud. So you cannot rely on public clouds like Azure, but you still want to leverage those PaaS services and those services public cloud can deliver. Now Azure Stack allows you to buy that and make it available wherever you need it, and overcome like internet or connectivity challenges as well. So think about one of the main official scenarios is the cruise ship scenarios. So cruise ships run a ton of server infrastructure inside their cruise ships for entertainment systems and so on. Today they do that by running some kind of hypervisor, some flavor of hypervisor, and some virtual machines with the software in it, but they want to also leverage like PaaS services which are available in the public cloud. However, those clouds are not always connected. Those cruise ships are not always connected to the clouds. So what are you going to do? So Azure Stack really enables them to leverage the Azure platform on their cruise ships even without being connected to the internet. The other thing is we have a lot of services or applications which cannot deal with a lot of latency. So if you don't have a service provider which can guarantee you a low latency to the data centers of Azure, your applications might not work the way they should. So you can place an Azure Stack closer to you with enough, with less latency, so you can run that application on it. The second one, I would say, reason for Azure Stack are regulatories. This can be government regulatories, industry regulatories, or even company regulatories, which the company provides by themselves. And some companies are, for example, not allowed to store data outside of their country, or not even outside of their data center. And this is where Azure Stack comes into play. They can leverage Azure services in a country where Azure itself is not available, using an Azure Stack from a service provider, or putting an Azure Stack inside their data center. And the third use case I can see is cloud application design on premise, right? So there are a lot of companies out there, they're not ready for the cloud. They still need to do the legal work. They still need to do governance and all those things, but they want to start modernize their applications so they are ready for the cloud. And Azure Stack lets them do them, right? So they provide a cloud platform, a modern cloud platform, where they can build those applications on, and as soon as they're ready for the cloud, they can move those applications to the cloud. So I talked a little bit about the consistency between Microsoft Azure and Azure Stack. We can see on the right side Microsoft Azure, and it provides a cloud infrastructure. It provides a portal for infrastructure services and PaaS services, so the customer can deploy those services on top of the Microsoft Azure platform. This can be done using the portal or the APIs. And if you look at the Microsoft Azure Stack on the left side, they provide exactly the consistent platform. So if you build some automation, or if you have people who know how to use the Azure portal, they will be able to run exactly the same stuff on Microsoft Azure Stack. So you don't have to build the automation twice or do a complete redesign of your applications, because you can leverage the same set of tools. So if you have a quick look, this, for example, is the Microsoft Azure portal, and this one is the Microsoft Azure Stack portal. So they look exactly the same, and they provide exactly the same or consistent features, and it doesn't really stop on the look and feel. It also, as I mentioned, provides the same APIs. So if you look at, for example, a release pipeline where you use, for example, in this case, Visual Studio Code to do deployments of your services on app services, you can use the same automation and the same integration to deploy app service code on Microsoft Azure. But today, now you can also connect it to Microsoft Azure Stack running into your data center, and you can deploy the exact same code and the exact same automation to it without doing a big change. Right? So we can see a lot of customers, for example, running dev environments in Azure, and then running the production systems on their Azure Stack inside their data center or inside their country, where they can run their production data. So one of the big challenges is, and I will talk a little bit later about how Microsoft overcomes that challenge, is how do I get from an Azure data center like this one to an Azure Stack solution in that form factor, right? So Azure Stack today can be a minimum of 4 servers up to 12 servers, and they already announced that you can scale up later on with new racks, or even like extend by adding more servers and buying Azure Stack scale units up to 16 nodes. So let me show you a quick demo about the consistency of Microsoft Azure Stack. Okay, so what I open up here is the Azure portal and the Azure Stack portal. And as you can see, they look exactly the same. So on the right side, we have the Microsoft Azure portal where you can deploy services in public Azure. And on the left side, we have the Microsoft Azure Stack portal, which allows you to do the exact same thing. Something else I want to highlight is another thing. So you can see that I'm logged in here with my ITnetics user, and you can see I'm logged into the Azure Stack with my user, and I'm logged in with exact same user using Azure Active Directory, or in some cases I could also leverage ADFS to do so. So if I now click through the portal, I could deploy services on both platforms in the exact same way. However, what I want to show you is the automation part, using and leveraging, for example, the Azure CLI. So let me quickly switch to the CLI. Okay, so what you can see here, I opened up Bash on Windows. Of course, you could also leverage PowerShell to do the exact same thing, but for this demo I choose to use the Azure CLI on Linux. So if I'm running that, I can see I'm already connected and logged in to the Azure CLI. So if I do a list of clouds, which lists me the different environments, you can see that I have a couple of environments here. So I have the Azure Cloud, which is the public Azure Cloud, but you can also see that I have the Azure sovereign clouds like Azure China, the government cloud, or even the German cloud available. And what I added is the Azure Stack cloud. So I added that to my CLI, so I can leverage that using my command line for administration and deployment of resources. And that is also how you treat Azure Stack. So Azure Stack, however, it's connected to the same, for example, in that case, to the same Azure Active Directory, so I can log in with the same account. However, it does not show up in the Azure portal. It's a separate portal in a consistent manner. So you can always know where are you deploying the resources, and it obviously has totally different SLAs behind it, depending on how you operate Azure Stack. Now, what I'm going to do to show you that, I will leverage an Azure Resource Manager template, and I will quickly show you the template. It's a very simple one in that case. So if I have a quick look, I can see that this template allows me to deploy a storage account on Azure. And to show you the power of that, so I did the whole automation of that in that file, and you can think that we can have a lot more complexity in that file, so we can deploy whole applications running like databases, SQL servers, app services, other platform services, and everything, and configuring that using this ARM template. So the power comes with that ARM template, so I can use that to deploy something. And to do so, I leverage that script I have here, which I will copy paste, and you can see I will use that to run it against Azure. If I switch here, you can see that I first create a resource group in the location West Europe, and after that I create a storage account within that resource group. So this will take a while to create that. As you can see, now we created that storage account in that resource group, and if I now switch to the Azure portal, you can see that I have now that resource group available, and if I go to that resource group, as you would expect, you have a storage account in there. So this is not really something fancy or something new. You could always do that against the Azure Resource Manager, and this is just the power of the Azure Resource Manager. But together with Azure Stack, I can now use the same automation template and run it against Azure Stack. And therefore, I quickly switch back to my Bash. And what I'm doing here, I'll quickly list again the different clouds. And I will just switch from the Azure cloud here to the Azure Stack cloud. Can do that by Azure Cloud set. I switch over to that. I quickly set the default subscription so I can work against that subscription. And now I can finally run the same automation, and if we list again that cloud you can see that we are now active on the Azure Stack one. So whatever I do now in Azure CLI, I will run against Azure Stack. And what I'm doing now, I take the exact same automation, I took the exact same resource manager template. The only thing I will change is the region where I deploy that Azure that storage account and that resource group, because I don't have West Europe in my Azure Stack. I only have a Swiss 02 location. So I take that script, go back to my bash, and quickly deploy the resource group. And after that, I'm creating the storage account, and again this will take a couple of seconds to deploy. And now you can see I deployed that storage account and that resource group on Azure Stack. If I switch to the Azure Stack portal, you can see I have now that resource group here. So this is the Azure Stack portal, and you can see that resource group I just created. And if I go into that resource group, I can see my storage account. So this is really the power of having a true hybrid cloud platform. I can leverage the same automation, the same things I built on the public cloud, as well as my on-prem solution using Azure Stack. And obviously, a storage account is not that impressive, but you can think that we can even deploy a lot more complex apps or solutions using the same system. So let me quickly switch back to my slides. This was our consistency demo, so you can leverage how you can leverage again public Azure and Azure Stack in a very efficient way. So let's talk a little bit about behind Azure Stack and what it is and how it integrates. So Azure Stack is an integrated system, which means it comes, as I mentioned, in a black box for you. Everything is pre-designed and pre-configured for your needs. You don't go and you don't have to download anything to make it work, or you have to figure out which hardware to use. You can really just order an Azure Stack solution, you do the capacity sizing, and then the OEM will help you to deliver that Azure Stack in your data center. So in this case, I want to quote Jeffrey Snower, which is a technical fellow at Microsoft, and he is one of the lead architects of Azure Stack. And he says, Azure Stack is for people that want to use a cloud, not for people that want to build one. So building a cloud can be a very big task, and it can take up to several months. And if you're just a small company, or even if you're an enterprise company, that's a lot of work. In terms of Azure Stack, we are talking about like 5 days until we have finally deployed Azure Stack and integrated into your data center, and you're ready to run it. So from a couple of months down to 5 days using Azure Stack into your system. So if that's not great, I can assure you it is. So there are different vendors. We have, like at the beginning, we had Dell, HPE, Lenovo, and we have a couple of others like Wortmann and Cisco, which came, and also some other vendors which also announced their systems as well. So you have the choice and the flexibility to order Azure Stack from one of them. And if you look at the systems here, you can see that they're commodity servers, commodity switches. So it's one solution. It's not something completely new. But they come pre-configured and pre-installed into your data center, and you don't have to take care of designing the hardware, choosing the right storage, choosing the right network components, choosing the right driver for your network component. Everything is pre-designed and done by Microsoft together with the OEMs. Think about it as a SAN solution. You just buy one box and you just administrate it over a web console, and that's exactly what Azure Stack is. So again, the advantage of such integrated systems and that experience are several different things. I talked about the integrated system as a design, so you can see again different vendors delivering that. And then I also mentioned that it's fast to deploy, so in a couple of days you're ready to deploy hundreds of VMs in your private cloud or in your hybrid cloud, if you will. But two other things I was not talking about until now is the billing model, which is also a pay-per-use model, so you don't need to pay Microsoft up front on it. You will pay what you use. There obviously is also another thing where you're not connected and you do not report usage data to Microsoft. There's also a capacity model, but I will talk about that a little bit later. And then you also have a common support. So it's not, usually when you build something like this, or if you run your on-premise infrastructure, you have different vendors on board. And if you have a case, something goes wrong, you call vendor A, and he tells you, yeah, that's not my problem. You call vendor B, he tells you that's not my problem. And at the end, you don't have a solution for it. In terms of Azure Stack, the OEM and Microsoft work together. So if you have an issue and they figure out it's a hardware issue, Microsoft will help you to connect to the hardware vendor, to the OEM, or the other way around. If you call the OEM and they realize that it's a software issue, they will make the connection with Microsoft to solve your issue, and everyone works together on this one. So the integrated system, as mentioned, comes together: hardware, software, support, and services. In a minimal stack, you have 4 servers, you have a BMC switch, and 2 top-of-the-rack switches. This is the minimum configuration. Obviously, you can have up to 12 servers, and this can be extended up to 16 servers in summer. And we will also see that you can buy multiple racks or multiple scale units of that. And again, Microsoft already did the architecture for it, so they designed it together with the OEMs. They made sure that you have the right drivers in place and that everything is correct. So no need to do that. Also, the deployment, the whole installation is completely automated, so there can't be mistakes to do the deployment of it, and you don't have anything to worry about it. This also saves you a lot of time, obviously. And then the whole solution is validated. You have an internal monitoring solution because you don't have access to the Hyper-V host or anything which is like a management in the backend. You really need something which is monitoring the system, and that's built into the Azure Stack appliance, and you just monitor it from the Azure Stack admin portal or over the API, so you can integrate it into your existing monitoring solution. And Microsoft also invested a lot to making this a really secure platform. So everything is so secure, you cannot even access it. They use the latest and greatest Windows Server 2016 security features like device and credential guards. They built in just in time and just enough administration. So they built a really, really secure platform, which you basically get for free, or which you just buy when you buy Azure Stack. And then obviously also patch and updating is integrated. So to keep that consistency between Azure and Azure Stack, you have to update regularly. And Microsoft releases monthly updates to Azure Stack to keep up with the changes in Azure Stack. And the whole update process is completely automated. So you don't have to think about what do I patch first, which system do I patch first, and keep up with that. You just get one file basically, and you put that on the system and you say install now, and it will take care and run through completely automated. So let's talk a little bit about the internals. Now, to be honest, we don't have to talk about the internals. They're highly interesting, but to be honest, as a customer or even like as a system integrator or service provider, you should not think about those services. Microsoft takes care of the internal Azure Stack architect. For you, it just becomes a black box which you need to operate from the admin portal or the admin APIs. So what can you have? So again, as I mentioned, you get one Azure Resource Manager endpoint. You can have several regions, which are basically data center locations. And then you have scale units which are basically racks or clusters to scale up your Azure Stack environment. So you can grow and place new regions as you would do with Azure. Today, what we have available is one instance of this Azure Resource Manager, then one region, and like one scale unit with 4 to 12 nodes. And again, Microsoft already announced that they expand the capacity using multiple racks or multi-servers, and then later on we will also get multi-regions and so on. And this is very important. So don't think about Azure Stack as a finished like product which you install and you forget about. Azure Stack is kind of like a cloud service, right? So it evolves over time and it gets new features and new functionality over time. So if you want to buy Azure Stack, you have to run the Azure Stack capacity calculator, and this is like an Excel sheet which helps you to like tell you how many nodes do you need, how big do the nodes need to be, how many RAM to put in, and usually like OEMs have like 3 different sizes, so they have a small one, a medium one, and a large one, but it really depends on the OEM what he provides you, and so you can find a solution with your OEM what you need. So let's talk a little bit about packaging and support and pricing before we then finally close up the webinar for today. So there are 2 ways to actually purchase Azure Stack. One of them, you go to an OEM, you order Azure Stack from him, and you get Azure Stack into your data center. The other option is you go to a managed service provider like ITnetics, or you go to ITnetics and you get a fully managed Azure Stack solution. So ITnetics will make sure that you get your Azure Stack integrated into your data center, and also operate that solution in your data center. So you can just consume Azure Stack subscription inside your data center. For licensing, if you pick the first one, if you choose to buy your own Azure Stack, you can choose the pay-as-you-use model. So you buy the hardware, but then the software is only charged at Microsoft if you really deploy something. So until you deploy the first workload on Azure Stack, you don't pay any licensing to Microsoft. And as soon as you deploy the first virtual machine or the first service, you start paying for that service. And if you remove that service, again, you stop paying as you would do in the public cloud. For that, you need an enterprise agreement or a CSP subscription. So these are the prices. Obviously, they are for the licensing prices. So obviously, Microsoft does not charge you for the hardware. They only charge you for the software licenses you need to run Azure Stack. So the prices are obviously cheaper because you still have to buy the hardware, provide power and cooling, etc. for it. And then the second model we have, if you don't want to report the usage to Microsoft, or you're not able to because you're in disconnected mode, you have the capacity model. This is only available for the EA customers, for the enterprise agreement customers. And what you do, basically, you pay a fixed fee for every physical core in your system, as you've done with other products. You have 2 packages. You have the infrastructure as a service package, where you pay an amount per core a year. If you just want to run virtual machines and network and storage on it. Or you buy the app service package, which is a little bit more expensive, but it also allows you, next to infrastructure services, also to run app services and platform services on it to make that happen. So you have a flexible of choice there. And again, we highly recommend that you talk to us. It doesn't really matter what you choose. If you want to buy an Azure Stack, we can help you in the consulting. If you want to have a fully managed Azure Stack from ITnetics, we can do that as well. Or even if you just want to find out about a hosted solution where you can consume Azure Stack from a service provider, ITnetics can help you as well to integrate in that, and ITnetics can consult you on the Microsoft hybrid cloud strategy. So with that, we have a little summary before we go to the Q&A. And this is, I think, one of the most important slides. So what is Azure Stack and what isn't? So let's start. It's not a replacement, just a replacement for your virtualization platform. If you just want to replace your virtualization platform, Azure Stack technically could do that, but it's not designed for that. If you're just looking for virtualization, then there are probably better solutions out there running with System Center and Hyper-V or other vendors. But if you want to build a true hybrid cloud experience, then Azure Stack is really the thing for you, because here you can also run PaaS services, you can also be consistent to Microsoft Azure Public Cloud, so you can leverage the same automation. Azure Stack is not a design your own infrastructure. If you want to build something and customize your infrastructure, Azure Stack is not that. Azure Stack is an integrated system which provides you with full design services with infrastructure as a service or platform services, and it's pre-configured and pre-designed to do so. It's also not a system which is just, as I mentioned, you deploy it and then you forget about it. It really needs to be consistently updated to be consistent with Azure and to provide the same services and keep that functionality between Azure and Azure Stack. And then the last one, and I hope I don't have to mention that too often, Microsoft is not the same as it was a couple of years ago. Microsoft is now a truly open vendor, so it's not just .NET and Windows only, it's a really open and flexible cloud solution, just like Azure is. So you can run your open source workloads, you can run your Linux workloads. Microsoft really provides you the great platform, whatever workload you're running on. So with that, I want to thank you, and we go over to a Q&A, and let's see what we have here.